Okay, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the special meeting of Perth and Kinross Licensing Committee. I'm Bailey Mike Williamson, convener of the committee, and I'm joined by my vice convener, Councillor Ian McPherson. I'm also joined by other members of the committee. On my left is Sarah Roger, the legal manager, and on my right is Magda Pasternak, the clerk to the committee. Also joining us are Karen Engelberts, licensing manager, Shona Meeke, license enforcement officer, and Mr. Ian McDonald from LIVSA, to answer any questions from members. Could I ask the clerk to confirm any apologies received for today's meeting and confirm attendance of those in the chamber and online?
Thank you, convener. We have an apologies from Councillor Allen, Councillor Freshwater, Councillor Harvey with Deputy Provost Andrew Parrott substituting, and from Councillor Robertson. All other members are present in the chambers. Thank you.
Could I ask if there are any declarations of interest in respect of the business on the agenda? If there are no items of declaration of interest, could I ask if the committee if they agree to hear a deputation on item 4? Thank you. On behalf of the committee, I'd like to extend a warm welcome to the deputations and members of the public watching today. Your request to speak has been granted. You'll be called to the lectern, should I say the table, as we reach the relevant item on the agenda, and be invited to make your deputation by the vice convener, followed by a period of time for questions from members. It is requested that the content of your deputation is kept relevant to the item of business being discussed today. Please also ensure that when you are answering your questions, your response remains relevant and direct to the question asked. Members, we're now moving on to paper 4. Members, this report is page 5 onwards in your document pack. I will now hand over to Sarah Roger, who will introduce the report.
Thank you, convener. I'll just say a few words of introduction. The purpose of the report before members today is to consider and agree measures to address unmet demand for taxis in Perth, identified following the independent assessment carried out by LIVSA. Members will recall that a previous paper was considered by the committee in March 2025. Members noted the findings of the unmet demand survey that had been carried out and asked that a consultation be undertaken in relation to options suggested in that unmet demand survey. That consultation was undertaken, and further time was also given to allow individuals who disagreed with the findings of the survey to provide further information and evidence to support those views. The report covers the background, both in terms of the legal situation as far as taxi licensing goes. It summarises the survey that was undertaken and which was previously noted, explains the outcome of the consultation, and addresses the issues raised by the respondents. Section 9 of the report considers the action available to the committee to address the unmet demand, and members will be aware and note that the recommendation today is that the number of licences be increased by 24 in order to try and address the significant unmet demand identified in the survey.
Thank you. Could I please invite Mr. Stephen McGowan from TLT Solicitors to make his deputation on behalf of the Perth Taxi Association?
Good morning, Councillor Wilson. Good morning.
Thank you, Mr. McGowan. It's just to inform you that you've got 5 minutes to make your deputation, okay? And I will give you a prompt at 4 minutes to let you know that you have obviously you have 1 minute left. So whenever you feel ready, just press the button and start, and I will begin the timer.
I'll do my best to get this within 5 minutes. Good afternoon, Your Honours. My name's Stephen McGowan. I'm a solicitor. I've been instructed to appear on behalf of the Perth Taxi Association. This gentleman with me is Sandy Smith, who's the chair of the association. As I'm sure Your Honours will see, there are also a number of other members and office bearers in the gallery. Given I've got 5 minutes, I'm going to come straight to the point. Well, very quick one preface point from me, Your Honours, which is to say a number of the points I have to say this morning, or this afternoon even, will be critiques and maybe criticisms of some of the detail which is in the report. Anything I say that may be a critique should not be read as being a comment on the association's desire to have a positive relationship with Your Honours as a committee. And anything that I say that may be a critique should not be read as a negative comment towards their desire to work positively with Your Honours licensing team either. Having said that and got that out of the way, I'll come to the point. My client's position is that the process which has led us to this point is defective in law. The report to the committee asks you to accept that the consultation process was fair and inclusive, and we say that is wrong. Firstly, there is the issue, Your Honours, of predetermination. The first consultation did not permit respondents to select no change as an option, thereby excluding a legitimate and reasonable outcome from the outset, which we say is contrary to law. It requires a consultation must take place at a formative stage with all options genuinely open. Now, the report that's before Your Honour says that this was addressed after my clients had pointed it out with the second consultation. But the Council's public messaging around this on the 18th of August 2025 said, quote, if you've answered the first consultation, you don't need to do the second. But Your Honours will still rely on answers to the first. Now, I would suggest that that should be a concern to the committee, that type of messaging. And in any event, Your Honours, my client's position is that the horse had already bolted. A particular outcome was already being preferred. The status quo option has never really been on the table. And that being so, all else thereafter, Your Honours, we suggest respectfully is fruit from the poisonous tree. The fact that a second consultation occurred does not of itself cure this. The committee report acknowledges the risk of bias towards a preferred option, but from my reading, doesn't explain how this was mitigated. The next point is about the LVSA methodology. The committee is being told in this report that the methodology is best practice and that perhaps any criticisms are unfounded, but the report, for our reading, doesn't engage substantively with the detailed methodological flaws which my clients have identified in their consultation responses. It seems to us to be selective in identifying the criticisms which my clients have levied, which means that for us, the report that's before the committee isn't providing the full picture. And what my clients would say is that it's for the committee to scrutinise the terms of the LVSA report, not simply accept it. The next point, Your Honours, is about the selection of 24 plates. We say there is no clear and robust argument to support this, that it is arbitrary, and the idea of a 30% increase is based on several assumptions about driver behaviour and operational patterns, which my clients say are unsubstantiated. The report itself acknowledges there is no way of ensuring that if, for example, three licences at the weekend and one additional licence was issued, that they would be used at the ranks at the days and times required. If that's the case, Your Honours, and we know that about 4 plates, why is there no similar pause for concern about 24 plates? My clients, thank you. My clients say the calculation assumes that the new plates will be used in a way which directly addresses the unmet demand, but in reality, new plates may be used for pre-booked or contract work, reducing the work which is available. And the new plates may not be operated in the same way. Next point, Your Honours, fettering discretion. My client's read is that the report treats the LVSA study as determinative. My clients say this is a misdirection. I would describe this as uncritical reliance on the study. That's a failure to exercise independent judgment. The ISUD is a guide, it is not determinative. My next point is about distinguishing between vehicle and driver shortages. We say there is a failure in relation to that, and we have provided evidence that the real issue is shortage of drivers, not vehicles. The next issue is the snapshot of the survey survey period, 72-hour survey period. Would your honours give me an indulgence to finish? I'm almost there. Thank you. I do appreciate it. I'm speaking as fast as I can. I don't want to lose the points. I'm sure your honours are trying to hear me as quickly as I'm speaking. That last part I mentioned was distinguishment between vehicle and driver shortages. The next part I was going on to talk about was the snapshot period. A 72-hour survey period, we say, is not representative of year-round demand or operational realities. I wonder what steps were taken by the committee to peer review the surveys which are conducted by other councils across the UK. There are some other operational issues which we see in terms of the ISD calculation, failure to adjust for outliers which can skew the data. My clients also say now, as we sit here today, the vintage of the actual data, this study was done something like 18 months ago. Is there any concern about the passage of time that your honours may have in this regard? Impact on livelihoods. The committee reports acknowledges those concerns, but there's no mitigation offered so far as I can see. I'll move to summarise and finalise now, and I do appreciate your honours giving me the extra minute or two to let me finish my comments. I'm missing out one or two pieces, but I'm trying to railroad myself as quickly as I can to the end. Summarising points, your honours, my position, my client's position, is that the report that's before you does not cure the fundamental defects in the consultation. We suggest that there has been procedural unfairness, we suggest that there is unreliable evidence, and we suggest that there has been an unlawful fettering of discretion. The choice of 24 plates is not justified. Perhaps a more targeted incremental approach, such as the 4 plates, which the report itself discusses, and monitoring the impact of that would be more prudent and evidence-based. Ultimately, your honours, I'll finish by saying that what my client wants is fairness. So I suppose my final part today is to ask you, your honours, to reflect on whether a decision should be taken today. And we say that respectfully it should be open to your honours to make no decision today and to start again, to instruct a fresh up-to-date survey over a longer period of time which properly deals with the flaws which we say exist, and thereafter launch a fresh public consultation without closed questions, without a predetermined potential outcome, a suite of options, and come back again. And I think that's what my clients are looking for. They are looking for fairness, they're looking to be treated equally, and they're also hoping that you have listened carefully to my breakneck speed submissions. Sandy and I are both here to answer any questions as best we can. Thank you for letting me speak a bit longer than normal. I appreciate it, and I'll draw my breath now. Thank you, your honours.
Thank you. Do members have any questions for Mr McGowan? Councillor Braun.
Thanks, convener, and thank you, Mr McGowan, for your representation. I just want to go back to the beginning, if I may, just to clarify a couple of points for my question at the moment. You mentioned this term predetermination. Now, you didn't go through it very clearly, but I'm just trying to find out, are you saying the consultation should have been carried out before we considered the survey? That's my first question. Or do you feel that's the wrong order we did it in? That's the first thing I want to clarify. You didn't make it very clear. And the second point is that you were talking about the original consultation went out, then there was a feedback saying that it was incorrect, and then the second consultation was extended, the term was extended. And are you saying that there was a no option put onto that second part? But this, you mentioned this this comment that if you'd already answered the consultation, you didn't have to answer again. So could you just clarify those 2 points, please?
Certainly, convener. Sorry, your honour. Your first question was about predetermination. You're giving me an opportunity to speak a bit more openly in that, so I appreciate that. Our position is that the underlying law which applies to public consultations, which applies to licensing consultations, just like any other consultation, requires certain steps to be followed in order for the consultation to be lawful. These are things referred to as the gunning principles, if we want to be really technical about it. One of them is that there should be no predetermination in the formative stage, the initial stages of a public consultation. If you have a public consultation that says we're thinking about two options, option A and option B, 24 plates or unlimited plates, then we say that is wrong in law, because in order to meet the gunning principles, there needs to be an earlier stage where you canvass a multitude of other options. Those other options can be based on evidence that's been brought to the committee, such as by a survey. But my clients say the association, the Perth Taxi Association, says to you that didn't happen. That when the first consultation went out, there was only those two options, and we say that was wrong. It would have been more fair for the public and other people who want to have something to say about these matters to be presented with a wider suite of options rather than option A or option B, and that's it. Your second question was about my comment about the second consultation. My reading of this, and I'm happy to be stand corrected, but my reading of this is that the only reason the second consultation occurred, Your Honour, is because of my client's response to the first consultation, where we pointed the issues out that I've just canvassed to you. That's my reading of it. The second consultation attempts to deal with the points that we raised, the predetermination point, the lack of options. But the public messaging that the council issued around this encouraged people who answered the first consultation not to engage with the second, and we say that's unfair. That's not a critique of the committee or the people who have drafted this report, but nevertheless, public messaging on the council's social media channels disencouraged people to engage with the second consultation. Therefore, there was an impression given that the answers provided by those people in the first consultation were sufficient, and I don't think that's right, because the people who answered the first consultation thought there was only two options. Being disencouraged to respond to the second consultation because you've answered the first, I think, is a flaw.
Are there any further questions for Mr. McGowan? Billy Brock.
Thank you, Mr. McGowan. I've actually got a couple of questions, so I don't know whether you want me to ask them one after the other or just get you to answer them as we go along. Okay, I can do them separately if you want. Firstly, how many clients are you representing today?
I'm representing the Perth Taxi Association. As to the number of licence holders the association represents, Sandy can help me with that.
Says everybody ran play. Everybody ran play this issue, so 70.
I'm not sure if you heard that because Sandy's microphone's not turned on. Do you want to just give the answer? How licence holders in there?
I'd say everybody who holds a rank plate in Perth. So it's all the holders that are all members.
My other question was, you said that 24 plates, there was no clear argument for that. Could you maybe give me a wee bit more information on that? I know given the timescale that you had to do your presentation, and so just trying to get a bit more on that.
The assessments which are done suggested that there was a 30% unmet demand, and therefore the number 24 comes from a calculation. If we're going to add 30% onto the existing number of plates, what number do we get? And that's where the 24 comes from. As far as I understand it, I'm happy to be corrected if that's not the case. In our consultation, in my client's consultation responses, we provide a number of detailed critiques to the methods which are undertaken in terms of the general survey. And I know Your Honours have got that before you, and I know you'll have regard to that in your deliberations. So without seeking to detain you too much, I suppose my general point would be, in the report, I gave you a particular quote earlier, and I think this is perhaps the way for me to deal with this. The report itself talks about 3 licences to cover Friday and Saturday, and a 4th licence to cover the weekend during the day as well as the during the weekdays. So my point to the committee would be, if that's the case, well, why was that never captured as one of the possible outcomes, as well as the status quo, which just wasn't canvassed at all in the initial consultation? As to the percentages and the ISUSDs and the whys and wherefore, the technical detail of that is before you in the responses that we've provided.
impact on livelihoods. So can you maybe elaborate a wee bit more on how that would impact on them?
Forgive me. Thank you again for that question. I appreciate being given the opportunity to give a more detailed response to that. Thank you for that. There's a couple of points to this as I order my thoughts, Councillor. My first point is there's a number of people who are here today who are also greatly concerned about the decision that the committee may make today because their livelihoods will be impacted. And that's the people who hold the plates that we've talked about. It's Sandy, it's Sandy's members, it's some of the people who are sitting in the gallery today. Why are they concerned about their livelihood? Well, I suppose the obvious point for me to make is that if the committee issues another 24 plates, then that's less work for them to do because that's more plates which are available, and that would therefore water down the amount of work that's available for people who are taxi licence holders. So that's a great concern for them. In many, if not all cases, the people who hold the taxi licences which your honours grant and renew from an ongoing basis, that is their livelihood. That's how they put the food on the table to feed their families. So of course it's going to be concerning for them that their ability to go out and work could be fettered by having a wider number of licences being issued. That's the kind of human point. The legal point, Councillor, is that the case law and the statutory test, the unmet demand test, my argument is that it's not just a numbers game. My argument is that the committee has got an obligation to lift its head and to take a wider look at all of the factors which apply, and that does include not simply a calculation on a spreadsheet. It's about looking at the wider impacts on the trade. It's about looking at the wider impacts on the public, and that wider lens is something that I think your honours should have regard to, and that's why I think that taking into account the impact on the existing trade and their livelihoods is a legitimate thing for your honours to deliberate when you go in to have your deliberations. Thanks, Councillor.
Thank you. Deputy Provost Parham.
Thank you very much. I heard what you said there with interest, and it strikes me that the argument you're making is that the demand, if you like, is fixed, and more licenses will merely mean that there's less for each person to do. But the whole point of this appears to me that there is unmet demand, that there is more work to be done if there were more people to do it, or that the existing people are not choosing to do work that is there to be done. Can you say a bit more about your feelings about the survey? What are the nubs of the issue about the survey that to you suggest, if you like, that there isn't an unmet demand? Thank you.
I think one of the strongest rebuttals that my clients have sought to offer is what we say is the lack of engagement with a point that you yourself have just made, Councillor, which is the people, the lack of people. And my clients have a very strong view that one of the issues around potential unmet demand isn't the number of taxi plates, it's the number of drivers, which is a totally different point. And what my clients say in the two consultation responses, which you've got amongst your papers, is they put forward an argument that if there is an unmet demand, then in order for the committee to wholly understand the origins of that, the issue around lack of drivers has to be taken account of, it has to be dealt with. And we say that the survey hasn't properly taken account of the lack of drivers, and we say that the committee's report doesn't adequately deal with that issue. And so I suppose respectfully what we would say to the committee today is that there's more work to be done around understanding what the issue is in relation to a lack of drivers, because as your honours well understand, drivers are licensed separately to the plates which are for the vehicles. there's greater work that needs to be done around that issue to truly understand what some of the origins of that potential or alleged unmet demand might be. And we say that hasn't been done, Councillor.
There we go. Mr. McGowan, I've got a question along similar lines. Our report indicates that the unmet demand survey for, say, 2013 has an ISUD of 6.7. And if we can ignore 2022 because of COVID and recovery, et cetera, we've now gone from 6.7 to an ISUD of 2,143. And you've mentioned repeatedly about the number of taxi drivers, but I believe we've got something approaching 1.79 drivers per car across Perth and Kinross. And I think that's probably about the 8th highest in Scotland. And I was just wondering if you'd like to comment on that.
If you just give me one moment, I'm going to look at the consultation response, which goes into a bit of a deeper dive on those numbers. Just bear with me one moment. I don't think I will do well with your honours if I try to read this out line by line, because you've already given me quite a lot of time. Can I ask you therefore, when you're deliberating matters, to have a look at the specific sections that I'll refer to, which I think addresses your point, convener, in more detail. So in relation to the methodology and the points, these paragraphs are dealt with. I'm going to use your honours report numbering now for ease of reference. So in terms of the critiques we make, those, I think, roughly speaking, come from page 109 of your honours report, which is page 6 and 7 of the association's responses, over a number of pages to probably up to page 120 of your report, where there is a number of paragraphs that go into detail around critiquing the methodology, and there are parts here which talk about figures being skewed and so forth. I'm not going to read all of that out because I would take too long, but that information is there, so it's before you. My only other final point to make about that, convener, would be to say, hopefully you've got from a sense of what I'm saying, is that our single argument is not what we say concerns about the methodology in the ISUD. We have raised a number of other points where we believe that the committee would do well to reset this process on matters such as procedural fairness and so forth. So although one of our arguments relates to the survey data and how it was used, we've presented a number of other arguments that are not related to flaws in data, which we would want you to have regard to.
Thank you. So my understanding, therefore, is that we've used the same methodology as we used in 2018, 2022, and to date. It's been the same methodology that's been used throughout that time. So I was just wondering if you'd like to comment on that.
I've not got the previous studies before me, convener, so I'm not able to offer any critique of the previous studies. I assume, and take your word for it, that the previous studies have been carried out to the same level. What I would say now is that we're responding to the study that's before us today. So whether or not the same methodology was used in previous studies, I would suggest that for the purposes of today's decision, is neither here nor there in respect of the arguments which we are putting forward for the current survey. I would ask your honours to have an open mind in respect of the arguments that we've raised, whether or not they were raised previously. The fact that they weren't raised in 2022 or before doesn't prohibit me from raising them now.
Thank you. Are there any further questions for Mr. McGowan? Councillor Braun.
Thank you, convener. I want to come back to this question of numbers of drivers, if I may, because you've mentioned that there was mentioned the survey. So it's a two-part question, really. Is we've talked about lack of numbers. I suppose in some way I'm trying to find out, is there any sort of documentary evidence to prove lack of numbers? that's perhaps a question for yourself, and one for Sandy perhaps more, is why is there a lack of drivers? Is it lack of money? Is it antisocial behaviour? Is it violence, threats of violence? Is it a fear of not working at night time? Whatever. So I'm just trying to see why there's a lack of drivers perhaps, and there's some sort of documentation to back that up.
Regarding the lack of drivers, it's a battle we've been fighting since round about COVID time and before that. There was maybe a generation of drivers who gave up driving with the COVID, didn't come back. There's a lot of people who went to do food deliveries and things like that. There's a lot of drivers who maybe are the British nationals who are continually victim of assaults, abuse, passenger behaviour. The passenger behaviour is one of the biggest keys. People non-paying fares, people abusing drivers, people abusing cars. And there is some nights that some of the drivers prefer not to drive a rank car because they don't want to go to ranks and be subjected to this. It's a massive problem. We highlight this to Police Scotland continually. I myself phoned them last Monday regarding an incident. I got a phone call back on Thursday and they were going to follow it up. Well, now a week's passed. If that's non-payment of a fare, that's a week a driver is waiting on his wages. And there's no other industry where that would happen. There's no other industry where this would happen continually. It's happening regularly. Now, as I say, it's putting people off applying. It's very difficult to apply for a job as a driver, and the process for applying for a job as a driver, you're looking at roughly approximately 6 weeks before you can accept it to drive. That's another factor that puts people off because they want a job, they want to make money. It's not a thing that they can get through quickly. Myself, speaking just basically on my own business point of view, I could put more cars out on a Saturday and a Friday night if I had drivers who were keen to work. But there's it's less and less of a pool of people who are willing to do it because of the factors that were mentioned there to you. And it's becoming harder and harder to recruit drivers. It's just really, really difficult. If we had more drivers, we put more cars out. It's as simple as that. I can sometimes sit up to 50% of our cars sitting empty on a Friday and a Saturday night because there is nobody to drive them. So another 24 plates would just give you more empty cars. Because people would prefer to drive private hires where they know exactly where they're going to get, where they're picking up the passenger they're getting, etc. Rather than a random where somebody can come across the road. You don't know who they are. You don't know how they're going to behave. It may be somebody you've had previous experience of, a car in front doesn't want to take them, etc. It's an escalating problem, and the lack of help we get from Police Scotland is a major contributor to that.
Councillor, you asked me to come back to you. Thanks, Andy. Councillor, you come back to me to ask about the data on drivers. I suppose I've had a moment to think about my answer there as Sandy was speaking. I've got a couple of points to make about that. If you are concerned that you don't have the correct level of data that relates to the point about drivers, then that for me is another reason why I would say to your honours, I think you should pause this process and reflect. It's incumbent upon you as the committee to make sure that you've got the appropriate data before you. The burden of proof is on you as the committee to satisfy yourselves that you think there's an unmet demand. The onus is not on me to argue otherwise. The onus with respect is on your honours to satisfy yourselves that you believe that that's the case. I suppose that what I've tried to do is to put across on behalf of the association the gaps that they have seen. And if your honour sees any force in any of those gaps, then I would suggest to you that the respectful suggestion that I made on behalf of my client, which is to start the process again and fill these gaps, would be the fair and proportionate way forward. And as I said earlier, the association wants to work with the committee positively. You know, they're your taxi drivers and they want to work with licensing sensibly and proportionately, but they want fairness. And for the reasons we've outlined, we think there has been gaps in the way that it's been conducted. So I think you've got my point on that, Councillor.
Just a quick follow-up for Sandy. Just to clarify that the problem with drivers is nighttime and the weekends. Is that generally the case?
Mainly night time. It can also happen daytime as well. We have had meetings with the licensing manager and the licensing staff. We've had an action group who have had meetings there, and that has been mentioned on more than one occasion. Incentives for to get drivers involved, things we can do to help drivers, but nothing as such yet. We do have a good working relationship with them, and as Stephen says, that's something we want to continue, but we need to be able to recruit more drivers.
Sandy, I've got a question for you. On page 102 of our document pack here, one of the respondees has responded, drivers pay £150 per week to lease a plate. I was just wondering if you could comment on that.
Yeah, I can see that there. It's not something that I personally do. I think the majority of the larger offices, we work on a different basis and we don't lease plates out. I know there was one person in the town who held a lot of plates and they rented them to individuals. I don't know if that's still the case or not. That was somebody that owned a plate and they rented it out to the individual. Myself, I think the main offices such as ACE and A&B, I don't think we do that. So I think we work on a different basis to that. That's one comment. That may have been somebody who rented it at that time from someone. But I don't know if that still goes on.
Are there any further questions?
Thank you, Raj. Going back to the point you're making about, if you like, the split between taxi work and private hire work, compared with, I don't know, 10 years ago, are we saying that the total market is bigger or smaller? And I'm including taxi and private hire work. Has the market got bigger or smaller over that time? And what has happened to, if you like, the split between taxi work and private hire work? Are there journeys being done now that, because they're pre-booked, as I understand it, they're private hire, that would previously be done as taxi work? Can you make a comment about how the market has moved? Thanks.
What I would say is, obviously, there has been some steady growth as the population has got bigger, so it has got slightly busier. But there's other factors involved as well, such as COVID, lone females, the bus service. The bus services in a lot of the areas terminate maybe around about 6 or 7 p.m. And a lot of the people who stay in these areas perhaps feel they have to pre-book journeys before they go out to ensure they get a taxi back. There's a lot of maybe change in thought with people as well, that they're booking journeys out and in before they go out. I know myself and other large offices have booking apps, similar to the comments you had on there about Uber, people saying they wanted Uber and things like that. We've all got booking apps and the cars can be tracked. So when your car's on its way, it tells you the car that's coming, the registration, the type, etc. If you want to then send that to a partner or a family member so they can make sure that you're getting home safely, that can be done. So there's nothing that nobody else is doing that we're not, and that's the 3 main firms in the town. There is, from COVID, I would say there's more people who now tend to plan their journeys and plan their evenings and book journeys in advance. The people who are looking at ranks for taxis are the people who are maybe coming out of events and they're not used to going out, or they're regular goers out and they're maybe needing to go X, Y, and Z. People who are going out to functions and things prefer to know exactly they've got their cars booked and things like that. So I would say that's why the private hires are busier.
was that permissible? Thank you. Just one small addendum to that answer, Councillor Provost, is just to say your honours have local knowledge around the numbers of private hire licences, which you will obviously have regard to, because you're the committee that issues these licences. But you'll also know that you conduct an assessment on over provision in relation to private hire licences, which is a different beast to unmet demand. You've got unmet demand for taxis over here. You've got over provision for private hire cars over here, and the two tests are not the same. But I think what your honours have as a committee is local knowledge in that flex of the market between those two processes that you follow, over provision and unmet demand. So I am confident you'll have regard to that in your deliberation.
Are there any further questions for Mr. McGowan? Thank you. There are no further questions for you. Thank you. Could I please invite Andy Lothian, representing himself and Ace Taxis Perth Limited.
Mr. Lothian, normally you would have 5 minutes for your deputation, but in the interest of balance, given that the previous presentation had 8 minutes, you will now receive 8 minutes, and I will give you. I will indicate. Well, that's fair enough. But you can use as much of it as you want or as little. But at the 7-minute mark, I will let you know that you have 1 minute left to speak. Okay, and I will start the timer as soon as you start speaking. Thank you.
Oh, right, where to start? First and foremost, I might upset a few here at the moment. Pete Wishart MP made a statement to one of my drivers. It's high time to get rid of. You know, think it's high time to get rid of the 3 fat cats that are servicing Perth, me being included, Sandy and Derek, who are sitting over there. Well, I'm far from a fat cat. I stay in an ex-council house in Dunsinane Drive. I didn't even have a drive to put my car in. And my car's a 16 plate, so I'm not making vast amounts of money. So I'd like to make it clear, I'm far from a fat cat. I'd like to talk about, it seems to be, we're talking about the unmet demand where people are waiting 10 minutes for a taxi at the ranks and that. I'd like to put that in a kind of a wee perspective. I phoned the emergency services 3 times in the last 2 months. One of my drivers was assaulted in Potterhill Gardens and his wallet was stolen. The police were phoned 999. They never turned up. They phoned them 2 days later for a statement over the phone, which I told them not to give and insisted the police constable come round and speak to him in person. Nothing's ever happened to that. Another one was a girl had passed out unconscious just outside my office. I phoned the ambulance service and they told me it would send one as soon as they possibly can. I was in a mad panic because she was shallow breathing. I put her into recovery position and things like that. It took them 40 minutes, that was during the day, to get an ambulance to this girl. 40 minutes. The third occasion was I'd come to my work at 9 o'clock in the Old High Street and I seen a guy kicking the shop next door to me's door, kicking it and shouting obscenities to the Pakistani guy behind the counter. Well, who was holding the door shut. Turned out he wasn't serving them drinks. So I done a 999 call because I thought he's either going to smash these doors in or he's going to assault the guy. That was at 9 o'clock in the morning. The Police Scotland on that 999 call turned up at 1:30 to review the CCTV footage. Now we're trying to, as an industry at whole, we're trying to service Perth. We're doing the best we can. At the peak times, we do struggle. Is there a 24 plates, and the taxi system in Perth is a very, very delicate ecosystem. There's only so much money to go around. If you put 24 plates or even open the plates up, you would cause unsurpassed detriment to the drivers financially. You can't sustain 24. You haven't got room for 24 new plates on your ranks. If every taxi was to turn up now on the ranks, they wouldn't get on them. There's no room for 24 taxis. How do we circumnavigate this? And you know, we want to come up with a solution. We want to work with the licence department and come up with solutions. But we're not going to do it just based on what the survey is. We need to, you know, we have to have talks, sit down and have informal talks. How are we going to get guys to come and work for us? How are we going to get guys to do the job? How are we going to care for these customers? We are letting down if they're taking 10 minutes, you know, to come to the rank. If you're insistent today, I know this looks as though I'm on the make here, but if you're insistent today, we, as Sandy just pointed out there, we run what's called hackney cabs, plated cabs, and we run private hire cabs out of 3 offices. Now, we're the only 3 companies that service Perth 24 hours a day. And I must add, you're talking about the gap, you know, between 12 and 3 where we're letting people down. We service Perth 24 hours a day. Sandy, Derek and myself, we run at a loss. It doesn't actually pay us after 3 o'clock in the morning to offer a 24-hour service, but we have done it. And Ace Taxis have done it since 1960. You know, and I hope you take this on board, what we actually do for Perth and Kinross. If you're insistent, and my only idea coming up for a quick idea would be, if you give 21 plates out, how are you going to give them out? Can I just say you've recently introduced 5 new wheelchair plates, yeah? I would like you to know what happened with these 5 wheelchair plates. One guy got 3, they're all my friends. One guy got 3 and another 2 guys got 1. That didn't increase the wheelchair cars in Perth, because all that happened was they put their private hires as a hackney. So you lost 5 private hire plates, which were wheelchair access vehicles, and gained them. And these taxis, I can assure you, are not working at the peak times that you thought they would work at. Now, what they then done was they put it to a ballot. So you put your name in a ballot and it was like a raffle. Put your name, put your raffle tick in it. If you draw your number, you get a free wheelchair access vehicle. Now, I want you to know, because I don't think you know this, that some guys were allowed to put in over 100 votes. Now, out of the 3 that won, one guy had over 100 votes and the other 2 put in another 50 each, at least, that I'm aware of. That's how it went, when other guys were just putting in 1. I brought this to the attention of the licence department, and I said, well, this is ridiculous. I'm hearing people are putting multiple votes, and it should be 1 vote to get up at the plate, yeah? And that didn't happen. That didn't happen. The 3 guys that won put multiple votes in. I said to them that the process of giving these plates out was absolutely ridiculous. And I said, I'm going to put 1 in for me and my ex-wife. And I got told by licence, you better make sure that your ex-wife's aware of that. I said, oh, she is. Because I phoned her up and I said, I'm going to do this, Nikki. And what I'll pay you if we win a plate is I'll pay you 1 pence a year. And that was going to be my agreement with her. And I fear if you issue 24 plates, how can you guarantee that these plates are going to service Perth at the times you want them to take up the slack? You can't promise that with the plates. What I can say to you is, you've got 3 offices who've worked for years and years, us since the 60s, we service Perth, yeah? If you're insistent on trying to make the ranks better, as you give the plates to the 3 offices equally, we'll upgrade our private hires, because our private hires are sitting with all our offices in the town. We always have cars sitting outside our office waiting to take, because our offices act like ranks as well. People come around the office, but there is times where our private hires are sitting doing none, and they could be round the rank. If you're set on issuing plates, you should divide them equally between radio cabs A and B and us, because we're the only 3 today, 24 hours a day. our weekend drivers would then take up the slack on the rank. Now, I couldn't promise you, if you say you gave me 8 plates, I would send 8 cars down the rank because they'd be working within the confines of what they're working at the moment. But if normally we've got 2 or 3 cars sitting around at the office, we could send them round to the rank. Right, I'll just end there. Sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Lothian. Do members have any questions for Mr. Lothian? Councillor Braun.
Thanks, Convener. I've got 2 actually, but I'll ask the first one and then we'll go on to somebody else. You presumably obviously have the same problem with drivers as Sandy does, but
Sorry?
you probably have the same problem with drivers as Sandy does. But you mentioned you'd like to work to improve the situation. I'm just wondering, how would you improve the number of drivers? How would you see a way forward on that?
We're trying our utmost. We're applying on Facebook. We're applying everywhere. We're applying with around the corner there at the, what do you call them? Is it the job centre now? We just can't get drivers. Luckily, I've had 2 in the last fortnight who've come on board. So that's a big step up, even just getting 2. Sandy's pointed out what the trouble is with the driving. It's not a great amount of money. It's terrible hours, you know what I mean? And you're putting up with a lot of nonsense, you know, a real lot of nonsense. He's told you himself, Police Scotland are next to useless with any complaints we put forward. You know, they're not helping us in any way, shape or form. We got a lot of trouble. A lot of drivers get disillusioned now because they're, you know, a lot of people want to pay by card. So they jump in a car at the taxi rank and say they go away up to bloody Burymere Road or something, saying it's a £7.50 fine, £7.50 payment. When they put the card in, the car's declined. What do you do? You know, and it's very disheartening, and they just get fed up and they say, I'm not wanting to work nights, you know what I mean? There's nothing open, I can't take them to, it's just, it's no, I don't know what we're going to do, but it's the thing that we need to address with licensing. We need to all clash our heads and say, how are we going to get people into the industry? That's where the problem is. You know, it's not giving out just 24 plates or even an open them up. And I'd warn you against opening them up as well. You want to look at the examples of Dundee and Inverness where that happened. It was catastrophe for 6 months. And you'll find it, one main company will take over if you open the plates up. Inverness Taxis, they're dominant force, and what's their name through in Dundee? They're the dominant force. They take over everything. You know, this thinking giving plates out to the willy-nilly, just whoever wants one. That's not going to say he's going to work the hours you want him to work. He might just work it during the day, and you've issued plates for nothing. You've took away the workload for the boys during the day who are making it. They can't get an income. You know, it really is the taxis is a fine ecosystem, you know. I would please put off any voting that you've got to do, and let's all just sit round the table and discuss where we're going to go. What we've got to make, we are seriously want to help. We're seriously want to address whatever you want to address, you know. If we didn't like letting people down, you know, but we're there to service them. If there's money to be made, we want it. You know, we want it as well. You know, it works both ways. We want to service these people, but I don't think somebody waiting 10 minutes at rank validates any large increase in taxi licenses number. Oh, sorry.
There we go. Thanks, Mr. Lothian. You've probably kind of answered my question. Just as an association, I know you're all private businesses and you're all there to make some money, but do you work together to try and, I mean, obviously this survey shows that there's extra money to be made there somewhere if you get the drivers. But, you know, do you work together as an association to make sure there is a bit of cover on the ranks, or it's just supply and demand on the private hires?
Anything I'm saying today has nothing to do with the association. I'll make that quite clear. This is my own thoughts. I am a member of the association. I do attend the association meetings, and to be fair, I got on quite well with the majority of them. Yeah, I work closely with radio cabs and A and B. We drink, we'll have a pint together and that, you know, there's no animosity. It's not like other towns. That's another thing you've got to be aware of, you know. Who are you giving the licence out to? In Edinburgh and Glasgow, it's gangsters that run the taxis, laundering money, you know. You haven't got that problem here. Be grateful for what you've got, and we'll be grateful, and in return, we'll try and fix the problem. We're aware there's a problem. Give us a chance to fix the problem. And as the association, you know, obviously it's just like politics where we all clash, you know, which one will hear that idea and we hit another idea. But in general, we got on really well, I would say, you know. There's a few didn't like me and I didn't like a few, if that helps. Right.
Councillor May.
Thank you, convener. Hello, Mr. Lothian. I would just like to ask you a question that Mr. Smith had put to him, which was that some of the comments from the trade said that drivers were having to pay £150 a week to lease plates, and Mr. Smith said that he was not aware that that was a common practice these days. Can I ask, is that something? Thank you.
Right, it's quite complex. So you have let's say for argument's sake, you have a Hackney plate, a taxi plate, yeah? So your choice is to go out there and sit in the rank all day and all night or whatever and make money, yeah? Now, it isn't, in real terms, if you were a guy working for yourself, you could make money. If you want to make more money, and I do it, I charge them £130, yeah? So I charge them £130. It's what's called radio fees. So I hand them what's called a PDA, yeah? So they get that PDA and they put it in their car and I give them the extra work. So when a phone goes in the office, the Hackney then turns into a private hire, which suits them because they could get a fare, yeah, from the rank. Say they get a fare up to the Coperanich Road. So they're dropping a person off at the Coperanich Road. Because we're all computerised now, when they drop off at the Cope Creef Road, the Coperanich Road, they would head back down the town to the rank before they get to the next fare, yeah? I can give them then, if I've got a job, I can give them a job for, say, Leatham to Craigie, and then for Craigie, maybe down the town. So it benefits them. There's nobody forcing anybody, you know what I mean? It just gives them extra money. Now, I'm no bumming myself up here. There's a guy no long started with us, Rob. What's that? Rob's name's got the Tesla? Rob Mackay's just started with us. And got a guy for Bridget, and he's got that new Tesla. And he's been working with me for a couple of months, and he says, he was working the rank himself. And he says, I wish I'd come to you months and months ago because I'm making a lot more money by paying me the 150 than I was making just with the meagre earnings I was getting off the rank. Yeah. So I don't, is there any, have I kind of cleared that up for you?
Convener, is it okay if I just follow up on that? I totally understand that, and I kind of see that as being like when somebody hires a chair in a hairdressing salon. So I get that, but what I wonder, and I don't know if it's appropriate for me to ask, so I'll ask anyway, but overrule me if it's not. Is there any way of guaranteeing then that there's an equality to what work gets sent to the drivers who are paying the 150 pounds to lease their plate? Thank you.
Right, I'm going to be perfectly honest with you. As I'm with all them, when they come on, you can ask anybody that works for me on a what do we call it, radio money basis, yeah? I will give them work. Yes, I will give them work in the town. Will I give them the Glasgow airport or the Edinburgh airport? Highly unlikely. But they will get their fair share of work. You know, they won't get their long runs. They'll go to my cars, and they know that. I don't beat it by the bush. I tell them the chance. I'll give you work, but you might not get the Edinburgh airports or the Glasgow airports because they'll go to my own cars where I make more money because I'm 50-50. And that's being totally honest. But they do get them. You know, if say like the school times and stuff like that, they do get them. If that helps. They wouldn't do it. They wouldn't be working for me and paying me £150 if I wasn't giving them a lot back, you know. I didn't think is there any private hire drivers here today? No, no. It's a pity because they would have told you exactly, you know. I could, if it worries you, I can give you a phone number and you could phone them ad hoc and say, you know what I mean? They're getting their fair share.
No, I'm not CSI anybody. That was a lovely answer. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Lothian. Can I just clarify? At one point you said it was £130, then you went to 150. What is it? 130, 150? Thank you. Are there any further questions? Sorry. Yes, Councillor Brown, sorry.
Yeah, it's a second question, convener. You just actually, when you were speaking a few minutes ago, you said that you're speaking separately from the Perth Taxi Association. So I'm going to ask you, what are your thoughts on the public consultation?
I think it is similar to what the solicitor said. It's been conducted very badly. To begin with, the two answers were open it up or 24 plates. There wasn't a no change offer to the general public or the trade, you know. Other than that, when I personally look at the surveys that have been done, the last one and the last two, they are basically the same. There's not a huge difference. So where is the survey getting this 24 plates now that it didn't get 6 years ago, you know, or when, you know, in the last couple of months? It just seems so, it's wrong. Ken, for what I'm reading into it, I'm thinking there's no much difference in what there was. So where's this survey getting this 24 plates fee? And I just think it was all conducted. It could have been, I think we need to get yourselves involved, licensing involved, and the taxi industry involved. It's the association, yeah, and we come to an agreement, you know, or a way ahead, a plan ahead. We need a plan ahead. We need to plan ahead, and just throwing taxi plate suits not going to cure it. It's not going to cure it.
Any further questions? Mr. Lothian, we have a report in front of us which suggests there is an unmet demand, and that's what we have to address it as a committee. I'm just wondering on your comments that if we go against either of these two recommendations, i.e. we did nothing, essentially what we're doing is essentially we would just be taking the cap off it, because every time there was an application came along, we would have to say, yep, here's your plate, because we've got a survey that says we've got an ISUD of something like 2,140. So I'm just wondering what your comments are on that.
I think I mentioned that earlier. I've racked my brain about how we get, what's the quick fix? That's what we're looking for. How do we amend this? What is the quick fix? And the quick fix is, you know who's covering your business 24 hours a day. No, just, you know, we've got cars out at that time. Sandy, Derek, myself, A and B, radio cabs and Ace taxis. The best bet is if you're going to issue plates, and I wouldn't say 24, I would say, let's start and give, I don't know, leave it up to you. Let's give the three offices the plates, because our private hire cars are getting upgraded to Hackney, which are out at the time where the under-demand is going to be more beneficial to the general public in Perth than just giving them out willy-nilly. Do you get where I'm coming from?
No. Because what I'm hearing you say is, well, yes, release you up to 24 plates, and we can deal with it. So therefore, what you're trying to say to me is well, there's there's an unmet demand, and we could fill it with those additional plates with our overnight business. So what you're essentially saying to me is gimme, okay? And that's what I'm trying to get my head around. You've already suggested once that you could use these plates, but you don't want us to release the plates, and I'm really conflicted with what you're actually wanting here.
I can address that by saying Perth cannot withstand, it's a delicate ecosystem of what the pot of money it's there in the now. If you put 24 plates on, that's 24 plates on when the unmet demand is getting met. A lot of guys would go to the wall. They couldn't afford to have another 24 plates on. Yeah. But our cars are working all the time anyway. Our cars are out there anyway. If you issued, say 21 plates, 7 plates each, these cars have got the work anyway to substantiate them through most of the, 24 hours a day. But it will free up the cars we've got sitting at our offices or just waiting for people to come round. Instead of sitting at our offices, it could be round at the rank, meeting the undemand at the times you're stating. And I'm sure you would get an agreement for Sandy and Derek that would happen. These cars would go round at the times you mean, at the times that we need it. That would help alleviate the unmet demand. But it's not you've got to watch with the unmet, it's where we are meeting demand, you can't afford to hear these guys sitting an hour and a half on an £8 fare. Do you know what I mean? If you introduce these cars and they all come out at, say, at 6 o'clock at night and want to work till 12, there's no the work there for 24 cars between 6 and 11, but there might be between 11 and 3, and it just becomes economically unviable. It's economically unviable to put 24 licenses on the road in Perth without thinking about. I mean, it's basically you're increasing it by is it a third or something? You know, it's increasing the trade by a third, but the financial demand isn't there to increase it by a third. You know, it might alleviate for a wee while, but you'll lose. Guys will just go to the wall, and then you'll find that a lot of guys will pack in because they can't make money.
Are there any further questions for Mr. Lothian? If there are no further questions, Mr. Lothian, thank you very much. Okay, thank you. Members, I was wondering if there was a number of issues raised around about the survey and its competency. And we have Mr. McDonald there. Could you please keep quiet in the gallery? So I was wondering, members, do you have any questions, please, for Mr. McDonald regarding the survey, the process for the survey, etc.? Councillor Braun.
It all seems to be at this end at the moment. Good afternoon, Mr. McDonald. Looking through it, obviously the figure calculates there is an unmet demand. Accept that. But your report that doesn't actually specify what the problem is. You've mentioned that it could be more plates, it could be an unlimited number of plates, it could be just a lack of drivers. And this has come up obviously with various comments with the representation. So I just wonder if you could expand on that a little bit to give us a bit more thought about that, because you know we could be going down the line of more plates, but it's really just a complete lack of drivers. And we're not solving the problem. I wonder what your thoughts on that. I mean, the report is full of statistical information, obviously, and as my colleagues know, there's lies, damn lies, and the statistics, is the old saying. So it's really, I suppose, if you could clarify what you think is the problem here.
Capacity at the taxi ranks is a product of the number of taxis working are available, the number of drivers to work them, and the hours that they work. Clearly, taxis don't drive themselves, so you have to have the drivers. one taxi can work one shift or it can work multiple shifts. So that changes how much capacity is provided. What we measure in the unmet demand survey is fairly empirical. It's what capacity is available at the ranks, what the demand is at the ranks, and how much of that demand is met without people having to wait for a taxi to arrive at the ranks. We collect background information about the trade and the views on a range of topics, including driver availability. It is a national issue, driver availability. COVID is blamed, and it seems to be a catalyst which occurred, which made people change careers, and some of them have not come back. Many single factors have been blamed for this. I think it's a very complex range of factors. We've heard quite a few of them today. There's people who've gone on to do deliveries and decided that that's for them. They're not coming back to driving a licensed vehicle. It's become more difficult or less attractive to work at during the unsociable hours. There's a perception that the police aren't protecting the trade as much as they could or used to. There's a range of different factors. So the drivers play a big part in the overall provision of capacity. We have a very limited toolbox, a very limited number of tools in the toolbox available to us within the remit of the study, and measures to increase the number of drivers are not in there in that toolbox. So all we can look at is how many plates.
Thank you. Councillor Watt.
Hi, Mr. MacDonald. As part of the survey, did you take note of the numbers of plates that were actually active on those dates to see what percentage of the plates we currently have were active?
We didn't log the plates working off the ranks. What we did do was we took sample observations of when a taxi left the rank and how long it took to return to the rank, and used that to calculate the effective number of taxis working off the ranks at different times during each day. So that doesn't mean that it's the let's say there's the effective number of taxis working off the rank in an hour is 10. It doesn't mean that there's 10 taxis working on the rank and only on the rank and doing nothing else. It means that there's the equivalent of 10 taxis. So one might have gone off on a rank-based hire and then picked up a pre-booked job for part of the return journey to go somewhere else. It might have another journey then, and then eventually gets back to the rank. So that taxi can take an hour plus to get back to the rank. Other ones might be back within 12 minutes. So it works at an average, and that's used to calculate the effective number of taxis at the rank. We've also got our graph showing the proportion of taxis in the fleet which are operating from the ranks, are effectively providing that level of capacity on the ranks during each hour.
Have you got a follow-up, Alan?
It would have helped to, as you say, taxis don't drive themselves. That would have helped to see, you know, if the driver issue is a real problem. We would have known who was, you know, if we'd taken note of the numbers.
It's possible to do that. Obviously, we don't have who's driving the vehicle. Some vehicles are multi-driver driven. It's possible to log which vehicles are operating at the rank at different times. It's quite an expensive process because it needs specialised cameras to do that, and it doesn't necessarily add that much to the pool of information. It doesn't add that much value to the information commensurate with the level of cost. So it tends not to be done.
Councillor McPherson.
Thank you, Mr. MacDonald. You undertook the survey for Perth and Kinross Council. Can I ask, have you undertaken other surveys for other local authorities?
The short answer is yes. We've done several hundred of them. over the years. We probably do more than 80% of the surveys in the UK.
Thank you. In that case, my question was in terms of the survey and indicating the sort of unmet demand. We had an ISUD value of 2,143.5. I just wonder how that compares with other surveys that you've undertaken elsewhere. Thank you.
Pre-COVID, it would be unheard of. It's pretty dramatic. Post-COVID, the industry's changed so much that relatively high index values are more common, but the 2000 plus is particularly high. It is an exponential graph, if you like. So, 2000 isn't twice as bad as 1000. It's a bit worse than 1000. So that needs to be taken into account. Having said that, we look at the numbers. Basically, it's telling us it's the level of unmet demand is significant. It's quite a large degree of significance, if you like. If we found that the feedback from stakeholders and the public was saying, hey, there's no problem, we'd have another look at the figures because there's clearly some disconnect there. We'd need corroboration from all the different data sources to actually sort of corroborate the outcome, the results, really.
Councillor McPherson.
Thank you. Can I ask, when you're going out to do the consultation on unmet needs, are the taxi companies aware of when this is going to take place before the survey's done?
It varies by area. Sometimes yes, sometimes no. My preference is to inform everyone beforehand because the cameras are quite obvious once they're at the ranks, so people know something's going on, what's happening. We also put little notices next to the cameras to explain what's happening, why the camera's there. So it's not a secret. Usually the consultation occurs round about the same time. Sometimes it can be afterwards. Very occasionally it can be before.
Thank you very much. A couple of questions. I think it's become apparent, if it wasn't already obvious, that the market has changed over the years, and that has perhaps been accelerated by the experience of COVID. Has your methodology changed in the way you do your calculations in the same time frame? And I don't fully understand the scoring system, but would it be the case, if you like, that 24 licenses actually gets rid of 100%, but it's not a linear progression, that if you like, a smaller number of licenses than a quarter might actually deal with 75% of the demand? Can you say a bit more about the methodology? Thanks.
Okay. So it's good to put in context that there is always some level of unmet demand. You're never going to have a town or an area where there's always taxis waiting at every taxi rank whenever a passenger arrives at the rank. So there's always some degree of waiting, and that's normal. Right? If we observe no passenger waiting whatsoever, I would be suspicious about the results. So we've never had that. So it's really just the level at which that becomes significant. The calculation of how many additional licenses is intended to bring down the level to achieve an index which is below 80. So it wouldn't get rid of all the passenger waiting, but it would bring it down to what's deemed to be an acceptable level. In terms of the methodology, we measure how long passengers are waiting. Are waiting at taxi ranks. There is a weighting in the statistics, which means that the traditional late night peaks in demand are seen as less, I wouldn't say less serious, but they're given less weighting in the overall calculation. So it's daytime demand has seemed to be the sort of the more important one to address, the one that's more critical to address. And especially where you've got, it used to be the case, it's not so much now, but it used to be the case that Friday and Saturday night you get very, very sharp peaks at certain times. And there's no system on earth will ever address all of the demand in those peaks. So it's designed to take that out of the equation.
Mr. McDonald, if there's no other questions out.
Yes, there is. There's the Department for Transport guidance for England and Wales and Scottish guidance for Scotland are very, very similar. There's no practical difference between the two. So they set out fairly detailed guidance on how, not so much how the level of unmet demand is measured, in actual fact, but the type of consultation which should be undertaken. So the measurement of unmet demand is down to the established protocols and formulas.
So a quick follow-up, who agreed these protocols and etc.?
There was back in the 1980s, the University of Leeds came up with a methodology for calculating the level of significance of unmet demand, because new guidance by the Department for Transport was asking that it should be measured so that the licensing authorities should be satisfied that there isn't a significant level of unmet demand. So it was in response to that the university developed it.
Okay, thank you. Are there any further questions for Mr. McDonald? No, if there are no further questions for Mr. McDonald, thank you very much. Could I please now move on? Do we have any questions for officers? Councillor Braun.
I seem to start this then. So I've got two questions for officers, if I may. First question relates to the comment that we've had about lack of drivers, and it's come up. It's in the survey. We've heard it this afternoon. Sorry, we've had it in the report. So obviously the comments come back from the taxi companies that there's a lack of drivers. Have we sought data to support that? That's the first question.
What we have is that through 2022 through to 2025, the numbers of total drivers have not varied much at all. In the last 9 months, we've had 58 new passes for taxi drivers this year. We have a 67% pass rate for taxi driver applicants, and we are turning licenses around in 4.69 weeks. Although we're provided with 9 months, we do get those through in roughly under 5 weeks. As far as the drivers related to each license, we don't have that specific data.
Have we actually asked for that data though? Because they've obviously come back saying there's a problem with getting drivers, particularly at night time. Have we sought to get more data on that to work with for us to look at?
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
The drivers have said that the companies have said they can't get people at night time, particularly, and it's come up in the survey that the root of the problem may be the lack of drivers actually working. And it's come up in correspondence here. It's come up in the survey. It's been said today. Have we actually pursued that information more with the actual companies?
We've had at least one meeting where we've discussed, some of the concerns that the trade have regarding safety and so on. While that's not really the function of licensing, we have made contact with Police Scotland. We will continue to do so. When it comes to employment of drivers, that really is a business concern, not so much licensing. What we do is we try to process those applications as swiftly as we can, as fairly as we can. And yeah, that's the best that we can do in terms of licensing.
Right. Aaron, can I just ask you about, you mentioned about the turnaround of the plates, oh, sorry, the applications. So you said you're roughly turning around in approximately 4.5 weeks to 5 weeks. Did I hear correctly? You've got 9 months to turn the plate, to turn the applications around.
That's correct. Yes, the legislation allows for 9 months for those applications to be processed. And yes, you're right, under 5 weeks on average for those to be from the date that the application comes in through to the knowledge test. And we've increased the number of knowledge tests, the sittings that we have as well, so that we can make sure that they're put through that test more frequently instead of having to wait for a month to do so.
Just as a follow-up, therefore, I mean, there's been a number of issues that the taxis operators and Mr. McGowan has identified for reasons that taxi drivers don't want to come forward. Driver safety seems to be a particular issue, and I'm just wondering, are we working alongside the police to try and identify measures that we can take to try and support driver safety, or can that be done, taken away, and speak to a community safety team and see what can be done around that?
We can certainly take that away and see what we can do. Yeah, you know, we've, for example, South Street, there was some concern about open drinking and people coming out of the Tesco and you know, not feeling comfortable going to where the taxi rank used to sit at the Tesco entrance and exit. And we've worked with Roads to see if we could get that moved with the Centre for Inclusive Living as well, to make sure that those wheelchair spaces, you know, the accessibility was improved. That's ongoing, but wherever we can, we certainly try. We're limited in what we can do. We push our luck a little bit and ask other departments if they can help us, but we'll continue to do so and listen to the trade and see what we can do to help. But in terms of the function of licensing, we're quite limited in what we can do ourselves.
Thank you. Councillor Brown, do you want to come back in?
Yeah, thanks, Sabrina. The second point I was going to ask was, and this was brought up by Mr. McGowan earlier on when we were talking about the public consultation. Obviously, it went out first of all, and then there was a change with, from what I picked up from him, was that there was then added a no change option onto that. But he did say something along the lines that when it was put on there, there was a comment, and I don't know what the exact wording might have been, was that if you've replied to this before, you don't need to reply again. Is that correct?
I have the wording in front of me. And on the consultation page, it said for the expanded consultation, if I already completed a consultation on the limit of taxi licenses in Perth, do I need to complete the consultation again? And we answered, if you have already responded to the previous consultation, that response will still count and will be included in our report to the licensing committee. If you would like to submit further information, you may complete this additional consultation as well.
Thank you. Are there any further questions for officers? Okay, members, if there are no further questions for officers, do members wish to adjourn for further discussion, or you're happy to move towards a vote? Okay, members, we're going to adjourn for a few minutes. Okay, thank you for your patience, everybody. My motion, therefore, is to note that no evidence has been presented which calls into question the independent survey findings regarding the demand, and accept that there continues to be a significant unmet demand for taxis in Perth. Therefore, I agree to increase the current limit on taxi licenses in Perth by a further 24 licenses in order to address the established unmet demand for taxis. I also, I also request that the Head of Legal and Governance brings forward a further report to the Licensing Committee as soon as possible in relation to recommendations for the phasing in of an increase in the limit and any requirements to be met in relation to the new licenses. Do I have a seconder?
Happy to second, convener.
Thank you. Are there any amendments?
Yes, convener, I have an amendment to make. We have a clearly an unmet demand. I don't think there's any disagreement on that. However, I have a concern that as a committee, we don't have a fair public consultation before us. I think, in my opinion, whilst it was the decision of this committee that we should look at two possible outcomes, that was an unlimited number of licenses or a limit of an increase of 24. When the original consultation went out, there was not a no change option. And I appreciate various legal comments have been made on this, but the people who are consulted are not lawyers. They are ordinary people in the street like myself. And I think in circumstances such as that, to be fair, I think if that's the word I'm using, to have a fair opinion, there should be a clear option for no change. And that wasn't there. I don't think it would take that long to have another public consultation done, which will give the committee a fair way of deciding the way forward. It's a complex issue. I don't think there's any one easy answer to this, but I feel as a committee, it would be a much fairer view if a consultation was carried out whereby there were three options, as we said, an unlimited number of licenses, a 24 increase, or no change. And I feel that the time it would take to do that, I think it's about between 6 and 10 weeks. It would not be a big thing for us to defer. So my amendment is, put it simply, is to defer a decision on this until a further public consultation is carried out with clear options, that is who we've mentioned, which is the unlimited increase, 24 license increase, or no change. I think that would be a fair way of putting it to the public. So my decision, my amendment, convener, is to defer until we have the results of that second consultation. Thank you.
Do you have a second there?
Convener, I'm happy to second that amendment.
Sorry, could I therefore hand over to the clerk to carry out a roll call vote?
Thank you, convener. So we have a motion proposed by yourself, convener, seconded by Councillor Macpherson, to approve recommendations as set out in the report. And we have an amendment by Councillor Bob Braun, seconded by Councillor Watt, to defer to a further public consultation is carried out with an additional option of no change is added, and the results are back from the consultation. So in line with the section 21 of the council standing orders, we will now go to a roll call vote. So members, when I call out your name, please indicate whether you're voting for the motion or the amendment. Councillor Anderson.
Motion.
Councillor Braun.
Amendment.
Bailey Brock.
Motion.
Councillor Carr.
Motion.
Councillor Frampton.
Motion.
Councillor Macpherson.
Motion.
Councillor Mayor.
Motion.
And Deputy Provost Barrett.
Motion.
Bailey Williamson.
Motion.
And Councillor Watt.
Amendment.
So we have 8 votes for the motion and 2 votes for the amendment. Therefore, the motion is carried.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. That brings to an end the business on the agenda. Can I thank everybody for your attendance today and now formally close the meeting. Thank you.